What if some of your loving gestures without your knowledge were damaging the bond with your cat? In this MeowTube video, we'll reveal the secrets to interpreting their body language and forging unbreakable trust, transforming your relationship forever. Welcome to MeowTube, the channel for cat lovers. Part 1. Direct communication errors. Mistake number 1. Yelling at him. A cat's sensory universe, and in particular its hearing, operates on a level of sensitivity that is often foreign to us. Its hearing is not simply a more acute version of ours, it is a biological tool fine-tuned for survival with extraordinary precision. With an auditory spectrum 3 times greater than that of humans, and ear pinnae capable of rotating independently to pinpoint a sound with pinpoint accuracy, its acoustic world is remarkably defined and complex. Overwhelming. Understanding this context, or yelling at a cat ceases to be a simple reprimand and becomes an acoustic assault of devastating magnitude. For us, yelling is an increase in volume. For a cat, it's a shockwave, sonic. The intensity of our voice becomes a physically painful and neurologically stressful experience. The fundamental error lies in our interpretation. We believe we are setting a boundary, but the message the cat receives is radically different. It doesn't process semantic content, don't do that, but rather perceives a much larger predator emitting a direct threat signal. Its nervous system responds instinctively, releasing a surge of stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, preparing its body for fight or flight. There is no room for learning, only for panic. The association its brain makes is not between its behavior and the shout. Since the window for causal connection is a mere few seconds, the real association that is forged is much simpler and more damaging. Your presence, your raised voice, becomes a precursor to fear. Repeating this pattern doesn't generate respect, but rather a state of chronic anxiety. The home, which should be its sanctuary, becomes an unpredictable environment. The bond of trust erodes with each shout, replaced by a relationship of vigilance and distrust. In short, yelling at a cat is not training, it's traumatizing. It's teaching them through fear that their main source of security is also a potential threat, a deep wound in their psyche that they can never forgive. Mistake number 2. Playing roughly or joking with him. Feline play is a vital rehearsal of their hunting and survival skills. Not mere entertainment as we humans understand it. It is governed by rules and instincts honed over millennia. When we introduce our hands or feet into this equation, we make a serious communication error, projecting our conception of rough play onto an animal whose brain is wired differently. Our hands are, for the cat, the tools that provide food, affection, and security. They are the symbol of protection. The moment we use them to grab, immobilize, or move the cat as if it were prey, we create a profound cognitive dissonance. The source of its greatest comfort unpredictably becomes a source of aggression. For the cat, this is not play, it is an ambush by its closest ally. Acts we consider jokes, like pulling his tail, are an even more serious violation. The tail is essential for his balance and a barometer of his emotional state. Manipulating it interferes with his stability and body language. Similarly, chasing him around the house until he's cornered isn't a friendly game of chase, it's a simulated hunt in which he's the terrified prey. His instinct doesn't distinguish between a joke and a joke, only registering that a much larger creature is pursuing him with hostile intentions in his own territory. The long-term consequence is the creation of an anxious and defensive animal. The cat learns a logical lesson from his perspective. Human hands are potential weapons and must be treated with caution or preemptively neutralized. This leads to what many owners misinterpret as unprovoked aggression, when in reality it's a defensive response we ourselves have taught him. Each rough and tumble play session is a micro-betrayal that undermines the foundation of trust, teaching him that affection and attack can come from the same source. This ambiguity prevents him from fully relaxing in our presence, sabotaging the relationship from its very foundation. Mistake number 3. Punishing him. The use of punishment, such as spraying a cat with water or tapping its nose, is based on the flawed premise that the animal will understand the punishment as a consequence of its unwanted action. The reality of feline cognition completely invalidates this method. A cat's brain operates on principles of immediate association. If a cat scratches a piece of furniture and seconds later its owner appears and punishes it, the cat doesn't connect the action with the punishment. The connection its brain forms is much more direct and harmful. It associates the aversive stimulus, the water, the tap, with the person administering it. In this way, we are not educators, but rather the source of fear. From the cat's perspective, the experience is one of a sudden and incomprehensible sensory assault. A squirt of water is a shock, a touch on the nose, an invasion of a highly sensitive area. These experiences don't teach, don't do this, but rather be careful around this person. The result isn't a cat that stops the unwanted behavior, but a cat that learns to do it in our absence while developing increasing anxiety and distrust of us. Continued use of these methods can lead to a state of learned helplessness, where the animal, unable to predict or understand why it is being punished, becomes apathetic, withdrawn, or even aggressive, concluding that its environment is uncontrollable and hostile. Punishment, therefore, is an act of intimidation that destroys communication. While positive reinforcement builds bridges of trust, punishment blows them up. It communicates to the cat that its attachment figure is also a source of pain. This contradiction is deeply destabilizing for an animal that depends on us and represents such a fundamental betrayal of trust that although the cat may learn to tolerate us, it will hardly be able to forget or forgive the fear we have inflicted upon it. These miscommunications are just the beginning of a journey toward deeper understanding. In the next part, we'll uncover actions that violate your cat's sanctuary in ways many people do without realizing it. To become the guardian your cat truly deserves, subscribe now and don't miss the next chapter. Part 2, the violation of his sanctuary. Mistake number 4, interrupting him when he is sound asleep. Here's one that will surprise you. Waking your cat from a deep nap isn't a caress. It's a violation of its moment of greatest vulnerability. Its instinct tells it that a predator has found it. Doing this repeatedly destroys its sense of security in the only place where it should feel safe, its home. Feline sleep has different phases, but it's during REM sleep or deep sleep that the cat achieves complete physical and mental regeneration. The price of this state is temporary muscle paralysis that leaves it completely defenseless. A cat only allows itself to reach this phase if its brain considers the environment absolutely safe. When we abruptly wake it from this state, even with a caress, and we nullify that sense of security, its awakening isn't gradual, it's a violent shock that its instinct interprets not as affection, but as a surprise attack. The panic reaction is an evolutionary response, not a whim. If this is repeated, the cat learns a terrible lesson. No place is safe enough to let its guard down completely. It can develop sleep-related anxiety, seeking increasingly inaccessible places to hide, not for comfort, but out of sheer survival instinct. We are unknowingly conditioning it to fear us in their most defenseless moments, betraying the fundamental pact of protection they have with us. Mistake number 5, ignoring their territory. Cats are creatures whose emotional well-being depends on the stability and predictability of their environment. Their territory is not just a physical space, it's a safety map built with scent markings. Through the pheromones they deposit, when rubbing against each other, they create a network of signals that constantly reassure them that their world is in order. Key landmarks like their bed, scratching post, and especially their litter box are not mere objects. They are the anchors of their universe imbued with their scent of security. Suddenly moving these elements is the equivalent of someone reorganize our house without permission, generating immense confusion and stress. Without finding its familiar landmarks where they should be, the cat's sense of security is erased, and with it, its sense of control. This anxiety often manifests in behaviors we consider problematic, such as urine marking or scratching in inappropriate places, which are not acts of rebellion, but desperate attempts to restore order and reclaim a territory that has become hostile and unpredictable. Ignoring the importance of this personal geography invalidates one of its most basic needs, condemning him to a state of constant alert and undermining the sense of home she so desperately needs. Mistake number 6, forcing him to socialize. A cat's primary strategy when faced with an unfamiliar situation or individual is caution, maintaining distance, and above all, the option of escape. Its survival instinct dictates that evasion is always the first and best defense. When a human, intending to introduce the cat to a guest or another pet, restrains it and prevents its retreat, they are depriving it of its main mechanism for managing fear. Forcing this interaction is not an act of socialization, it is an act of cornering. From the feline's perspective, the experience is terrifying. Not only is it facing a threat, but its protector, the person it trusts, is the one immobilizing it and delivering it to the source of its panic. By denying it the ability to escape, we leave it with the only option left to a trapped animal: fighting. Hissing, scratching, or attempts to bite are not gratuitous aggression, but the logical response of a being that feels defenseless and in danger. By doing this, we teach them that we don't respect their boundaries or their panic signals, and that they can't trust us to keep them safe. Instead of helping them, we create or reinforce their fears, forever associating strangers with a traumatic experience in which we were complicit. Mistake number 7, laughing at him or humiliating him. Cats, while not understanding humiliation in human terms, are extremely sensitive to stress, physical discomfort, and ridicule. The practice of dressing them up or deliberately scaring them to elicit a funny reaction is a form of abuse based on a misunderstanding of their nature. A costume that restricts their movement, crushes their whiskers, or blocks their senses is not a funny accessory. It's a trap that makes them feel vulnerable and helpless. Their attempt to free themselves is not comical, it's panic. Similarly, deliberately scaring them exploits a genuine fear response, turning their sanctuary into a place of unpredictable threats. The most damaging aspect of these actions is our reaction. When the cat, in an obvious state of distress, looks to us for reassurance and instead finds laughter, a profound breach of trust occurs. They don't understand the joke, but they perfectly perceive the disconcerting reality that their suffering is a source of entertainment for their caretaker. Learn the dangerous lesson that their well-being is secondary to our amusement, and that their protector can become their tormentor at any moment. It's a betrayal of the empathy and care that define your bond. Respecting our cat's sanctuary is one of the greatest acts of love and understanding we can offer. If this chapter has been valuable to you and you believe this message is important, please show your appreciation with a like. Get ready, because in the final part we'll address the most serious and unforgivable acts of neglect. Part 3. Acts of gross negligence. Mistake number 8. Neglecting its sandbox. In the intricate psyche of a cat, our few instincts are as primal and non-negotiable as cleanliness. This behavior is not a mere preference or a whim for tidiness. It is a biological imperative ingrained by millennia of evolution. In the wild, a feline meticulously buries its waste for a dual survival purpose: to conceal its presence from larger predators and to avoid revealing its position to potential prey or territorial rivals. The act of eliminating in a clean place and being able to cover it is, therefore, fundamental to its sense of security. When we provide a litter box in a domestic setting, we are not offering a luxury, but an essential resource that allows it to carry out this instinctive ritual. Neglecting the hygiene of this resource is one of the cruelest and most insidious forms of neglect. Forcing a creature with such ingrained cleanliness to use a receptacle saturated with ammonia, feces, and bacteria, day after day, subjects it to chronic stress and an impossible choice. From its perspective, a dirty litter box isn't merely unpleasant. It's a source of danger and contamination that its instincts scream at it to avoid. It's trapped in a terrible dilemma: suppress its physiological needs, risking serious medical complications such as urinary tract infections, cystitis, or life-threatening blockages, or face the repulsion and stress of using a toilet that assaults every fiber of its being. When finally its instinct for self-preservation compels it to seek an alternative, clean place to relieve itself, a rug, a corner, its clothes, it is often met with reprimands or punishments from its caregiver. This cycle is a form of psychological torture. First, we subject the dog to unsanitary conditions that generate profound anxiety. Then we punish it for the logical and natural consequence of our own neglect. We are not seeing the behavior for what it is: a desperate communication, a symptom that its most basic need is not being met. Neglecting the litter box is an act of contempt for the animal's fundamental nature. It is ignoring its language, invalidating its instincts, and failing in the most basic duty of care, which is to provide a clean and safe environment. It is a daily offense, a constant discomfort that erodes its physical and mental well-being, demonstrating that its comfort and health are irrelevant. This form of passive abandonment is something that such a sensitive animal can never understand or forgive. Mistake number 9, ignoring their pain signals. A cat's ability to mask pain is one of its most remarkable evolutionary legacies and, for its relationship with us, one of the most tragic. In the wild, an animal showing signs of weakness, illness, or injury immediately becomes a target for predators. The survival of the fittest has programmed cats to hide their suffering until it becomes virtually unbearable. They won't whine, cry, or display their pain in a way that is obvious to us. Instead, their suffering manifests itself through subtle changes in behavior, a silent language that, as their guardians, we have a moral obligation to learn to interpret. Ignoring this language is not mere oversight, it is one of the most profound forms of neglect. The signs are there if we're willing to see them. A suffering cat may stop eating or, conversely, develop a voracious and anxious appetite. It may begin hiding in unusual places, avoiding the social contact it once enjoyed. It might stop using the litter box, not because of dirt, but because the act of positioning itself there is painful due to arthritis or an infection. It may stop grooming, resulting in a matted coat, or conversely, compulsively lick a specific area to relieve localized pain. A change in its sleep patterns, a reluctance to jump into its favorite spots, or increased irritability or aggression are often masked cries for help. When we attribute these behavioral changes to just being a cat, old age, or a bad temper, we are failing in our most fundamental duty. The cat, unable to verbally communicate its pain, implicitly trusts that we, its only source of help, will be attentive enough to perceive its struggle. By ignoring its signals, we turn our backs on it in its most vulnerable moment. It is suffering in silence, possibly with a treatable illness or manageable pain, while the person who should be protecting it remains aloof or indifferent. This is not an active and violent betrayal, but a passive abandonment, a lack of care that, from the perspective of the animal suffering in solitude, is one of the cruelest and most unforgivable breaches of trust it can experience. Error number 10, declawing. And so we come to the act that stands as the epitome of betrayal, a desecration of an animal's physical well-being and trust for pure human convenience, declawing. It is crucial to dispel the euphemism that often surrounds this procedure. It is not a permanent manicure. Onychectomy, the clinical term for declawing, is a series of amputations. It consists of the surgical removal of the last phalanx of each of the cat's toes, the bone, nerve, ligament, and tendon of which the claw is a natural extension. To put it in an unambiguous human perspective, it is the functional and anatomical equivalent of cutting off a person's fingers at the last knuckle. The consequences of this mutilation are devastating and permanent. The cat is condemned to a life of chronic pain. It suffers from phantom pain in its amputated toes, abnormal bone growth that creates painful splinters within the paw, and irreversible nerve damage. Its gait is forever altered. Lacking the bone structure at the tips of its toes, it is forced to bear its weight on a part of the paw not designed for it, leading to premature and debilitating arthritis not only in its paws but also in its legs, hips, and spine. We deprive it of its primary means of defense, leaving it in a state of helplessness that often results in increased aggression, with biting as its only recourse. We take away its ability to stretch properly, to climb, to knead as a sign of comfort, disrupting behaviors that are essential for its psychological well-being. Performing this act to save a sofa or a rug is a declaration that the integrity of an inanimate object is worth more than the physical integrity and quality of life of a sentient being. It is the ultimate betrayal. The cat entrusts us with its body and well-being, and in return we choose mutilate him irreversibly for our own convenience. It is an act of cruelty condemned by countless veterinary organizations and prohibited in much of the civilized world for one reason. It is barbaric. There is no possible justification. It is inflicting lifelong suffering on a loyal companion, breaking its body and spirit in such a fundamental way that it stands, without a doubt, as the most unforgivable act. Remember that the bond with your cat is built on respect for their nature, transforming us from owners into true guardians. We'd love to hear what you thought of this journey, so let us know in the comments which of the 10 points surprised or helped you the most. Every story enriches us as a community. If you want to continue exploring the fascinating feline world and build an unbreakable relationship, subscribe to the channel. If this journey has fascinated you, join us to reveal the next great mystery of the feline kingdom.